Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Friday, 25th July, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Under President Donald Trump, the United States military is expanding its enforcement role at the Mexican border, assisting ICE and holding detainees on military bases. The Trump administration also confirmed it will destroy contraceptives previously designated as aid, a decision criticized by international reproductive rights groups. In Illinois, a judge dismissed a lawsuit filed by the Trump administration that aimed to disrupt Chicago's sanctuary policies. Trump stated that Hamas will be hunted down as Gaza ceasefire talks wane, claiming Hamas is rejecting the deal because it knows what happens after the last Israeli captives are released. Months of intense negotiations are unlikely to result in the U.S.-India trade deal by the August 1 deadline, as Trump and his trade representative Jamison Greer are pushing for greater market access for American produce. Yun Yu, founder of Shanghai-based quantitative hedge fund Mingxi, noticed intern prospects studying in the U.S. struggling to complete their PhDs, attributing this to university funding cuts and stricter visa policies under Trump. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. revealed that a new U.S.-funded ammunition manufacturing hub in the Philippines has been approved for joint use by American and Filipino forces, an agreement reached nearly a year prior after his meeting with Trump. Turning to Scotland, Donald Trump arrived for trade talks with Europe ahead of his August 1 tariff deadline, stating that the chances of reaching a trade deal with the EU are 50-50. He is scheduled to meet with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to discuss trade, and also plans to meet with British PM Keir Starmer. Upon arriving in Scotland, Trump also stated that immigration was killing Europe. Trump also addressed questions about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, denying being briefed about his name appearing in related files and claiming he has not really been following the Justice Department's interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. Meanwhile, in Russia, the parliament's upper house approved a bill that punishes online searches for information deemed extremist, a move seen as a restriction on free speech. Russia has cut interest rates again as its economy slows. Wartime spending since Russia's invasion of Ukraine has sharply increased the country's inflation rate. Falling inflation has persuaded the central bank in Moscow to continue relaxing the country's record borrowing costs. A Russian passenger plane operated by 7 airlines landed safely after turning back to Novosibirsk Airport in Siberia due to issues with its cabin pressure system. In Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Russian negotiators have begun to discuss a possible meeting with Vladimir Putin. Ukraine is working to secure funding for 10 Patriot air defense systems as part of a deal allowing European states to buy U.S. weaponry and provide it to Kyiv. Ukrainian soldiers who have lost limbs in the war against Russia are finding new purpose through golf, which rehabilitation experts say helps them to heal and master their prosthetics. Starlink systems used by Ukrainian military units experienced a 2.5-hour outage overnight due to a large international outage caused by an internal software failure. Shifting focus to China, Shanghai is hosting its 8th annual World Artificial Intelligence Conference, WAKE, where Premier Li Qiang will give the opening keynote. The 3-day conference includes a high-level meeting on global AI governance. Pfizer and 3SBio have finalized a licensing agreement granting Pfizer worldwide rights to sell 3SBio's cancer drug, SSGJ-777, with 3SBio based in Shenyang receiving a US $1.25 billion upfront payment in what is the largest deal ever for a single drug in China's biotech industry. Jason Lin of Examine received a US $15,000 annual scholarship from Brandeis University but his mother is concerned about instability in the U.S., and Lin has concerns that even a U.S. master's degree in economics over the next 5 years might not be worth the risk. Across the continent, the European Union summit with China was unproductive, as the EU finds itself caught between Washington and Beijing following Donald Trump's return to the White House. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is scheduled to meet with Donald Trump in Scotland to discuss trade. A senior commander stated that Ursula von der Leyen did not communicate with him recently. Finally, in the Philippines, President Ferdinand Marcos, Jr., revealed that a new U.S.-funded ammunition manufacturing hub has been approved for joint use by American and Filipino forces. Marcos stated that the plan was agreed upon almost a year ago after his meeting with US President Donald Trump. Tensions have reached a boiling point between Thailand and Cambodia as a long-standing border dispute escalates into a humanitarian crisis. Approximately 138,000 people have been displaced by the clashes, resulting in at least 44 deaths, 32 in Thailand and 12 in Cambodia, and over 130 injuries. Artillery fire, jets, tanks, and ground troops have been deployed across 12 locations along the contested border, marking the worst violence in over a decade. Martial law has been declared by Thailand in 8 districts, 7 in Chanthaburi and 1 in Trat, bordering Cambodia. Amidst the escalating conflict, the Thai Prime Minister has cautioned that the situation could devolve into a full-blown war. Despite offers of mediation from countries like the United States, China, and Malaysia, Thailand prefers to resolve the conflict bilaterally. Both Thailand and Cambodia accuse each other of instigating the escalation, leading to strained diplomatic relations. Shifting focus to China, the nation's foreign minister has attributed the Thailand-Cambodia conflict to the enduring damage caused by Western colonizers. China has pledged to play a constructive role in easing tensions. The UN Security Council is scheduled to convene an emergency meeting to address the escalating border violence. The conflict is reportedly fueled by a personal feud between political leaders. China faces a complex global landscape marked by deglobalization, geopolitical friction, and increasing tariff and non-tariff barriers, particularly impacting its automotive industry. Premier Li has called for a healthy economic relationship with Europe, emphasizing both competition and cooperation, and urging collaboration in services trade, technological innovation, the green economy, and digital transformation. The U-China summit revealed persistent divisions, suggesting long-term tensions despite calls for cooperation and limited climate pledges. The president of the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China, IXCC, noted that while the summit exceeded expectations, tangible progress is still needed to address business challenges. China's state-owned nuclear power firm has unveiled the design for an advanced nuclear reactor, the CFR-1000, a crucial step in its next-generation nuclear energy plans, awaiting approval and expected to be operational after 2030. China's New Information Support Force, ASF, is intensifying joint training with other military branches, showcasing an integrated combat system and increasing mobile and decentralized deployment capabilities, with small ISF teams being embedded into other branches to provide real-time information support. In terms of global investment, China pledged us $30.50 billion aid to the Philippines between 2015 and 2023, although only $700 has been dispersed due to project derailment, political shifts, and rising tensions. Chinese scholars are debating whether China should increase its involvement in the Arctic, particularly by developing shipping routes, as the Northern Sea route gains attention due to global warming. China is also a major player in global trade, with Chinese companies reportedly using Indonesian exporters to evade U.S. tariffs on solar cells and panels. 6 of Indonesia's top solar exporters to the U.S. are owned by executives at Chinese companies. Increased steel production from China has contributed to a global plunge in prices, exacerbating the impact of U.S. tariffs on steel manufacturing worldwide. The United States has imposed a 93.5% duty on graphite imports from China due to the surge in the electric vehicle market, causing share prices to soar for graphite miners outside China. PopMart CEO Wang Ning aims to establish the company as a global brand, leveraging China's manufacturing industry and market to incubate artists worldwide. Finally, China blames Western colonial legacy for Thai-Cambodian conflict. Turning to the United States, the House is considering advancing a key spending bill that could revive the controversial China Initiative, a program that targeted Chinese-American researchers, derailed careers, and devastated lives long after it was ended in 2022. The United States has also implemented a 93.5% duty on graphite imports from China due to the surge in the electric vehicle market, causing share prices to soar for graphite miners outside China. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, some exporters are being used by Chinese companies to evade U.S. tariffs on solar cells and panels. 6 of Indonesia's top solar exporters to the U.S. are owned by executives at Chinese companies. In the Philippines, China pledged us $30, 50 cents billion, in development aid between 2015 and 2023, but only used $700 million was disbursed due to derailed projects, political shifts, and rising tension. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is worsening, as Médecins Sans Frontières reports a stark increase in malnutrition cases among young children, attributing this to an alleged Israeli policy of starvation. Israel is reportedly attempting to deflect blame for starvation in Gaza through a PR campaign, denying Palestinian hunger and Israeli culpability, a stance at odds with reports from various governments and international bodies. Despite this, Israel will permit aid airdrops over Gaza, with Jordan and the UAE participating, though land-based aid is still deemed essential. The U.S. has paused Gaza ceasefire talks, accusing Hamas of lacking good faith, while Netanyahu considers alternative approaches, potentially ending negotiations. Israel and its U.S. allies are now exploring different avenues to secure the release of hostages and dismantle Hamas's control. Al Jazeera has condemned what it alleges is Israeli incitement against its Gaza reporter, Anas al-Sharif, fearing it is meant to justify targeting of journalists. Palestinian journalist Adam Abu Harbit was also recently killed in an Israeli strike. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has strongly condemned Israel for the killing of civilians, including children seeking aid, but has not recognized a Palestinian state. France's intention to recognize Palestine is mounting pressure on UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to clarify his position, as Starmer faces potential internal divisions over Gaza or alienating the White House. Emmanuel Macron's announcement seeks to create momentum for change concerning the recognition of Palestine. Turning to Iran, the UN nuclear watchdog chief stated the country is prepared to resume technical discussion. The IAEA seeks to restart inspections following recent Israeli and U.S. airstrikes that targeted Iran's nuclear program. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky affirmed that Ukrainian forces are maintaining their positions against Russia's ongoing summer offensive, which is focused on penetrating defensive line. Heavy clashes are concentrated near Pokrovsk, a key eastern logistics center that has seen intensified Russian assaults. Zelensky announced that Ukraine is set to receive 3 new Patriot air defense systems from international partners and is actively seeking funding for 7 more. He also plans to request financial assistance from Europe to support Ukrainian soldiers, hoping to attract more volunteers with increased pay, especially given the unpopularity of current mobilization efforts. President Zelensky also reversed course on legislation that would have weakened the country's independent anti-corruption institutions amid increasing pressure and widespread protest. The UK, France, and Germany are jointly calling for an immediate halt to the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Gaza, and are demanding that Israel lift its restrictions on aid deliveries. The UN has warned that Gaza is running out of therapeutic food needed to treat severely malnourished children. The leaders of Britain, France, and Germany are planning an emergency call to address the crisis in Gaza, following French President Emmanuel Macron's public endorsement of a Palestinian state. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing growing pressure from within his own cabinet and from MPs, including prominent figures like Angela Rayner and Yvette Cooper, to formally recognize a Palestinian state, especially in response to Israel's obstruction of aid to starving civilians in Gaza. More than 200 UK lawmakers are actively urging Starmer to take this significant step. India has committed $565 million to the Maldives for infrastructure and defense improvements. A school roof collapse in Rajasthan killed 7 children and injured 21, blamed on heavy rain. Allegations of mass burials and sexual assault have surfaced against the Dharmasthala temple, triggering an investigation. New Delhi police uncovered a fake embassy operating for 8 years. To counter militant camps after a clash with Pakistan, India is boosting drone use, pending the arrival of advanced fighter jets. Turning to Thailand, the Indian mission has advised against travel due to ongoing unrest. The Thai Tourism Authority advises against visiting attractions in Ubon Ratchathani, Surin, Sisaket, Buriram, Sakayo, Chanthaburi, and Trat provinces. France is increasing diplomatic pressure on Israel amidst the war and humanitarian crisis in Gaza by formally recognizing the state of Palestine, a move announced by President Emmanuel Macron. This decision aligns with France's commitment to a just and lasting peace in the Middle East, and would make France the biggest Western power to recognize Palestine. Meanwhile, France's highest court, the Cour de Cassation, annulled an arrest warrant for former Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad, who is currently in exile in Russia. The court declared the warrant invalid under international law, citing head of state immunity from prosecution in foreign courts while in office. Though some legal protections were upheld, the court allows for future warrants, a decision considered a setback for activists seeking to hold Assad accountable for alleged atrocities, including Syrian chemical attacks. The ruling potentially impacts other leaders accused of similar offenses. Concurrently, France's decision to recognize Palestine is increasing pressure on the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who has stated that the UK will only recognize Palestine as part of a broader peace deal. Japan is considering significant changes to its healthcare system, with a health ministry panel pushing to consolidate cancer surgeries and radiotherapies, given a decreasing number of surgeons. Shifting gears, the news aggregation app Smart News, previously valued at $2 billion, is contemplating a Tokyo listing potentially next year, guided by Mitsubishi UFJ and Nomura. The country's average life expectancy in 2024 remains nearly the same as 2023. Japanese men rank 6th globally, while Japanese women hold the highest life expectancy globally. To aid crime victims, Japanese police have launched a website to offer more transparent information. Politically, a Kaido News post-election survey showed that 56.4% of upper house lawmakers do not support the Liberal Democratic Party-led ruling coalition. Concurrently, an online campaign has emerged in support of Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, attracting even those not typically aligned with him, amidst speculation about his political prospects. In defense news, Japan's top government spokesman voiced regret over the scrambling of self-defense forces fighter jets in response to a South Korean military plane entering Japan's defense zone. Finally, the weather agency has fixed a malfunction in the ocean floor observation system off the Pacific coast, crucial for preparing for a possible Nankai Trough earthquake. Australia and Britain are poised to formalize a cooperation treaty, primarily aimed at facilitating the construction of Australia's nuclear-powered submarines. The escalating crisis in Gaza has exceeded Australia's worst fears, leading to heightened pressure on Israel to ease restrictions on humanitarian aid. Reports from medical professionals and aid organizations indicate starvation-related fatalities in Gaza. Domestically, the Finance Department has determined that PwC Australia meets ethical standards and has recommended lifting the long-standing ban on the firm's governmental project. Nevertheless, PwC Australia will remain ineligible for government contracts until at least 2028 due to a non-compete agreement with Sign Advisory, its spin-off. Dr. Eric de Schiemaker, a law professor at the University of Melbourne, is pursuing a discrimination lawsuit against the university following the leak of a 2023 email. In the email, he criticized the university for allegedly being dictated to by black activists, comparing it to an ideological re-education camp. Furthermore, Australia maintains a prominent position in competitive swimming, consistently achieving notable results in events such as the Olympics, despite its comparatively small population. Turning to Mexico, a preliminary hearing for 4 Mexican individuals involved in the deaths of an American and 2 Australian surfers has been postponed once again. In the realm of lobbying regulation in Australia, nearly 3 years have passed without any lobbyist facing sanctions under federal code of conduct and transparency rules, despite over a dozen breaches. Critics argue that the current regulatory framework is inadequate and lacks meaningful penalties. Similarly, the state of Victoria has not sanctioned a single lobbyist since the establishment of its current regulatory body more than a decade ago. Taiwan is holding a recall vote targeting about 1/5 of its parliament. The targeted lawmakers are from the Kuomintang PMT, also known as the Nationalist Party, which is viewed as China-friendly. Dozens of lawmakers could be unseated. This could shift the balance of power and give President Lai Ching-te of the Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, more influence. The DPP won last year's presidential election. The Nationalists and Taiwan People's Party hold enough seats to form a majority bloc. Supporters see the recall as a sign of Taiwan's democracy. Critics say it suppresses the opposition. The outcome will measure anti-Beijing sentiment. It could also provoke a response from China. Foreign Minister Lin Qialong recently visited Japan. This move is likely to provoke China further, according to a lawmaker from Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party. Cambodia is urgently seeking an unconditional ceasefire with Thailand amidst escalating border clashes. The clashes involve jets, artillery, tanks, and ground troops. Shea Keo, Cambodia's UN ambassador, requested ceasefire talks after a Security Council emergency session. The session addressed a long-running border dispute. Thailand has indicated a willingness to engage in talks. However, Thailand also issued a warning about the potential for a full-scale war. The conflict, the deadliest in 14 years, has caused at least 32 deaths. Over 100,000 people have been displaced on both sides of the border. Evacuations are underway in Oda Minchi province. Iran and European powers convened in Istanbul for nuclear talks. These frank, serious, and detailed conversations marked the first face-to-face meeting since Israel's mid-June attack on key Iranian nuclear and military sites, an attack that previously halted negotiations. The 3 European powers met with an Iranian minister in an effort to reopen negotiations regarding limitations on Iran's nuclear activities. Iran indicated it would continue nuclear talks. United States Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo announced that TikTok will be banned in the US if China doesn't approve a sale. Raimondo emphasized on CNBC that US control of TikTok's algorithm is essential. Boeing's South Carolina plant is seeing increased activity due to trade deals, encouraging countries to purchase more planes. The link between this and former President Trump's trade policies remains uncertain, but Boeing is a major U.S. employer and exporter. Moreover, Dahoud Hanid Ortiz, a convicted murderer freed in a prisoner exchange with Venezuela under the Trump administration, is now residing freely in the U.S., despite American officials being aware of his criminal history prior to the swap. Japan's Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba, promised to ensure the consistent execution of the recently finalized trade agreement with the United States. France's President Emmanuel Macron has formally recognized a Palestinian state, citing increasing global disapproval of the violence and casualties in Gaza. Macron cited a moral imperative and expressed decreasing tolerance with both the United States and Israel's handling of the situation. Pakistan continues to suffer from devastating monsoon rains, with the death toll now at 266 and over 600 injured since June 26th. Recent reports show 14 deaths and 17 injuries in the last 24 hours, including 94 men, 46 women, and 126 children among the deceased. Adding to the crisis, rescue teams are searching for a dozen tourists missing after flash floods in northern regions. The country is simultaneously enduring extreme heat, particularly in Karachi, where temperatures frequently surpass 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Mexico is grappling with a resurgence of the New World screwworm fly in Chiapas, catching ranchers off guard despite past incidents. The United States has responded by halting cattle imports from Mexico to safeguard against the pests spread across the border. Turning to the United States, a trailer home in New Mexico was destroyed by floodwaters. Stormwater runoff from wildfire-scarred mountainsides caused the disaster. Sri Lanka's Supreme Court has ordered $1 billion in compensation for the devastating Express Pearl incident. The Singapore-flagged vessel caught fire in May 2021 and sank off the coast. This resulted in substantial marine pollution and ecological damage. Germany is grappling with economic headwinds as Volkswagen reports reduced profits partly due to US tariffs. At the same time, the country's deportation figures have edged slightly higher compared to the initial months of the previous year. Moving to Japan, the world mourns the loss of Shunsaku Tamiya, who passed away at 90. Tamiya transformed his family's lumber business into the globally renowned model kit manufacturer, celebrated for its precision and historical accuracy in plastic replicas. Elsewhere, a nation's parliament building has banned the display of the rainbow flag. This decision coincides with escalating assaults against the LGBTQ community and increased rallies organized by far-right factions, creating a tense atmosphere during Pride Month. The Philippine Supreme Court intervened, suspending the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte Carpio due to procedural irregularities, a move seen as protecting her from political adversaries aligned with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. This decision has sparked debate about the balance of power within the government. Shifting gears, the Philippines is also evaluating the Parents' Welfare Act, reintroduced by Senator Panfilo Lacson, proposing penalties, including imprisonment, for adult children who fail to support their aging parents. Brazil continues to grapple with the fallout from the Bolsonaro era, as General Mario Fernandes, formerly the acting chief of the General Secretariat of the Presidency, testified that he personally drafted a document contemplating the assassination of then-presidential candidate Lula. Fernandes downplayed the document, describing it as a personal intellectual exercise rather than an official plan. Shifting focus to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is facing increasing pressure over rising inflation rates, which are impacting consumer spending and economic growth across the country. The Bank of Canada is considering further interest rate hikes to combat inflation, a move that could further strain household finances. In the United States, the debate over gun control continues to intensify following recent mass shootings, with President Biden calling on Congress to pass stricter gun safety laws. However, significant Republican opposition remains, making federal action unlikely in the near term. New Zealand celebrates a rising population of the endangered kakapo, though declining parasite numbers present a potential ecological puzzle. Meanwhile, the Law Society censured a lawyer for inappropriate workplace behavior, including physical contact with colleagues. Immigration NZ is facing criticism for its decision to deport 7-year-old Joshua Meats, citing potential healthcare costs. Ireland may soon see Riverdance star Michael Flatley enter the presidential race, as he announced his intention to return from Monaco to seek a nomination. This revelation occurred during a hearing in a Dublin court related to a dispute over his mansion. Okay, I understand. I will only summarize articles focusing on governance, international relations, major policies, and societal trends, excluding isolated incidents involving individuals, unless they have a significant geopolitical, economic, or policy impact. I will adhere to all other instructions regarding the format, style, and level of detail. Sri Lanka is set to boost its tourism industry by offering free visas to citizens of 40 countries. This initiative aims to attract more visitors from key markets, including the UK, the US, Canada, Pakistan, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, and Australia. Malaysia is facing scrutiny as Prime Minister. Anwar Ibrahim is accused of meddling in judicial appointments, sparking widespread discontent among legal professionals. Simultaneously, a hazardous haze, a consequence of seasonal fires in neighboring Indonesia, has prompted Malaysian officials to urge parents in Kuala Lumpur and Selangor to keep children indoors to protect them from the air pollution. Indonesia is facing scrutiny over a new wiretapping agreement. Prosecutors will now have access to user data. They can also intercept communications. Rights groups worry about potential surveillance, abuses. Officials claim the agreement is for law enforcement. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is facing increased pressure. Calls are mounting for a public inquiry into alleged foreign interference in Canadian elections. Opposition parties cite intelligence leaks suggesting attempts by China and other nations to influence electoral outcomes. Trudeau insists that the elections were free and fair. In the United States, the debate over the debt ceiling continues. Negotiations between the White House and House Republicans are ongoing. They are attempting to reach a deal to raise the debt limit and avoid a potential default. The deadline to raise the debt ceiling is fast approaching. Failure to do so could have severe economic consequences. Moving to France, widespread protests and strikes continue to disrupt daily life. These actions are in response to President Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms. The reforms raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. Unions and many citizens are demanding the reforms be scrapped. The United States recently lifted sanctions on several individuals and entities connected to Myanmar's military junta. This decision followed public praise of former President Donald Trump by a high-ranking general. Human Rights Watch has expressed serious concern, labeling the move extremely worrying. The organization fears it signals a softening of U.S. policy towards the military regime, which took control in a 2021 coup, removing the democratically elected government from power. Argentina continues to grapple with economic challenges, even as President Milei's policies have successfully curbed inflation over the past year and a half. the high cost of living still makes essential goods unaffordable for many. Meanwhile, in Fiji, 16-year-old James Cusatino is making waves as the nation's first sponsored professional surfer, backed by the surf and skate brand Forma. France recently saw the arrival of militant Georges Abdallah, a Lebanese pro-Palestinian communist, after his release following over 40 years of detention. This coincided with the U.S. condemning France's recognition of the state of Palestine, while Spain welcomed the move, reflecting a growing international trend with at least 142 countries now recognizing or planning to recognize Palestinian statehood, despite opposition from Israel and the United States. Turning to Greece, 6 port workers at Piraeus, the country's largest port, are now jailed pending trial after their arrest for alleged involvement in a cocaine smuggling operation, accused of being part of a gang concealing the drugs within shipping containers from Latin America. In Haiti, efforts to combat gang violence are intensifying as the nation dispatched 150 soldiers to Mexico for training, aiming to bolster their capacity to regain control of the capital. The International Criminal Court, ICC, has referred Hungary to its oversight body following its failure to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during his visit to Budapest in April, highlighting ongoing international legal scrutiny. During a visit to the Maldives, Indian Prime Minister Modi announced that India will provide a yard for 4,850 crore line of credit to the Maldives, underscoring India's commitment to strengthening the country's defense capability. Ireland mourns the death of Patrick Ryan, known as the Terror Priest, at 94. He aided the IRA by funneling cash and weapons from Libya and was involved in bombings targeting Margaret Thatcher, resulting in numerous fatalities. Japan was the site of an emergency landing when a South Korean military transport aircraft, en route to Guam, landed at the U.S. Air Force's Kadena base in Okinawa Prefecture after running out of fuel on July 13. The aircraft entered Japan's Air Defense Identification Zone at ease, without prior notification, raising concern. In the United States, Christina Chapman has been sentenced to prison for her role in an identity theft scheme that facilitated the illegal employment of North Koreans in U.S. companies. Peru is in mourning after a bus traveling from Lima to the Amazon region overturned on a highway in the Andes Mountains, resulting in at least 18 deaths and 48 injuries. Sudan faces further instability as the Islamist movement, ousted in the 2019 uprising, is reportedly plotting a post-war comeback by supporting the army. Turkey is battling fresh wildfires along its Mediterranean coast, prompting the government to declare 2 western provinces as disaster zones. Vietnam is reeling after a sleeper bus road crash killed 10 and injured 12. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh has called for an investigation into the accident, which occurred a week after a deadly boat disaster in Ha Long Bay. Vienna witnessed a sentencing in connection with a foiled terrorist plot. A teenage friend of the man suspected of planning an attack on a Taylor Swift concert last year received a 2-year prison sentence on his case. On a global scale, Asian shares experienced a decline following record gains on Wall Street, where Alphabet and AI stocks surged, while electric vehicle manufacturer Tesla saw a sharp decrease in value. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.